Hi, friends. Welcome to our Week 5 coding review. Let's start with question number 1. Right shoulder arthroscopy with lysis of adhesions. So your first step is to identify the procedure. The base procedure is arthroscopy. So we're going to go inside of our index. We're going to go over to the section on arthroscopy, and then we're going to find our anatomical site, which is shoulder. Once you get to shoulder, you'll find a range of codes, 29806 through 29828. Now you would take that range, and now your next question is, what have I not captured from my index? Well, we know that there was lysis of adhesions, so somewhere between that range of codes, we need to find one that includes the lysis of adhesions. So now we're going to take it over to the tabular section. Go over to that range of codes. All right, and what you find here, and I've already marked this out for you so you can match the base procedure, or what I'd like to call the parent code, with the variation of that base service. So when you look at 29825, it only says with lysis and resection of adhesions with or without manipulation. But that's not the whole story, right? So you've got to take this and find your base procedure code, which is 29806, right? I call this the parent code. Always, now we're going to read that up into the semicolon here. So what you have is shoulder arthroscopy, surgical, stop, right? That's your base. And then the variation of that arthroscopy of the shoulder is with the lysis of adhesions, 29825. The RT modifier, let's talk about modifiers really quick. So in the very beginning of the front cover of your book, you've got a cheat sheet list of modifiers. Now let me talk about informational versus functional modifiers, okay? So informational modifiers are going to be left, right, so LT, RT, TA, left foot, great toe, right? These are just informational modifiers. So you can get really, really specific about the exact site or exact digit, phalanges, metatarsal that was affected or being treated. Now, what I mean by informational is that these do not affect your reimbursement. Modifiers that affect reimbursement, we call these functional modifiers, okay? So you can see the difference here. They're double digits. So 22, modifier 22 is increased procedural service. Well, if you do more work, right, you want to get paid for that work. So if you did above and beyond something that would typically be included inside of a procedure, there is a modifier to inform your insurance carrier that more work was done, so you're reimbursed appropriately. Okay, so again, functional modifiers affect reimbursement. It's either going to make money move up, an increase in reimbursement, or it could also decrease your reimbursement. For example, there is also a modifier for a reduced service. So if you did less than the typical procedure, so for example, a provider could, or a surgeon could go in with the intentions to remove, the entire gallbladder or spleen or whatever the case is. But once the physician had accessed the organ, he determined it wasn't necessary and he only had to do a partial service. Okay, that's not something that they had planned on, and they couldn't project that would happen until they actually had entered the body cavity and had a visual on what exactly needed to be performed. So sometimes that happens, right? So the provider can't get paid for a whole service if they only did part of it. And when there's not a procedure code that represents partial, that's when we include something like a reduced service because that indicates, that clues the insurance company in that something unusual out of the ordinary occurred, and here's how we're reporting it. Now, one other thing I want to talk about modifiers is that anytime you're going to use a modifier that's going to affect your reimbursement, it's necessary to also include the chart notes, operation notes, whatever it is, with the claim, so the insurance company has that for reference to review for the medical necessity of, whether it was a reduced service, increased service, distinct procedural service, whatever. Now, this is just a short list, okay? If you want full descriptions of your modifiers, you do need to refer to your appendix. Appendix A is where all of your modifiers are housed. It also gives you a definition of what a modifier is. It says a modifier provides the means to report or indicate that a service or procedure has been performed, has been altered by some specific circumstance, but not changed in its definition or code. Modifiers also enable healthcare professionals to effectively respond to payment policy requirements established by other entities. And then again, this is where you're going to find the full definitions of what those modifiers represent if and when you append them to your base procedure code. All right, so just remember, informational modifiers do not affect reimbursement. Functional modifiers do. All right, let's move on to our next code here. A phalangectomy, left third toe. Ooh, so before we even go check out the code, check out your little short list here, and you can see that there is a informational modifier to represent laterality and the specific digit that the procedure is being performed on. Also, I want to mention, if you're looking for these particular modifiers, you won't find them in the Appendix A of your CPT book. You'll need to go over to your HCPCS book. That's that little skinny book, that third book that came inside of your bundle. All right, so let's go over and find phalangectomy inside of our index. Go over to my P's here. All right, here we go. I love it when it's easy. Phalangectomy, toe, and then you got two choices. Was it half a toe or was it the whole toe? All right, so unless it says otherwise, go with whole. 28150. All right, now we take it over to our tabular section. And there we go. Phalangectomy, toe, and then detail each toe. So we just had one toe, and we're going to represent what toe that was with a modifier, informational only. Even if you left it off, your claim is still going to get paid. But, details matter. So that's why we have those informational modifiers. All right, moving on. Release of left tarsal tunnel. All right, so what we have here, we could go to the index, we could go over to release, we could also go to tarsal bones. Let's see here. Let's go over to our index. URST, here I am. I love it. Tarsal funnel release. One code there, 28035. So now let's go over into our index, right? You may be asking yourself, what's a tarsal, right? This is how we build on our terminology, our knowledge of anatomy. So now let's go over into our index, or excuse me, our tabular section. And paying attention to not just where the code itself, but where it resides. So under the red bold section here, any procedures underneath of this section all are performed on these two anatomical sites. So this particular range of codes, 28001, all the way through 28890 are all associated to the anatomical site of foot and toes. Okay. And then you'll see your 28035 release, tarsal tunnel, and then it gives you some additional parenthetical notes. They may have referred to it as a posterior tibial nerve decompression. It is the same procedure. All right, up next, we've got a left knee arthroscopy. A sewing needle is removed. Okay, so again, starting with that base of arthroscopy and then going to the site of knee. Here I am. All right, arthroscopy, knee. And then you've got two ranges of codes, right? So you're going to go back and you're going to look and say, okay, what have I not captured from the index? Well, a sewing needle was removed. So I'm thinking maybe it'll say something like foreign body removal once I get over there. So let's see. So I've already capped off the specific range of codes that is going to be appropriate for us. But as a coder and as you're learning the layout, when you see different ranges of codes, right? This one is 29866, where these are 2987 through 298 range codes. You're always asking yourself, I wonder what the difference is between these two categories. Make sure you're taking that extra time and that effort to identify what is the difference, right? So you know for next time. So when you're reviewing these different sections, you can flip right over and go, oh, okay, that particular range of codes represents, specific type of procedure. So we'll look at that one once we get over there. So now I've got my starting point, right? Now I've got to go over and then see what the difference is between these sections. So I'm going to start off at our code range. So I would start off at the 29871. And then we'll flip through and see what the difference is between them. All right. So 29871, I've already identified this as your base, right? So arthroscopy, knee surgical, stop at that semicolon. And then here we go. So pieces of the puzzle are coming together. 29874, removal of a loose body or foreign body. So anything outside the body that enters the body, right, is foreign. So whether it's a bullet, a splinter, a sewing needle, a marble up the nose, these are all foreign objects, foreign bodies. All right, building on that terminology. So you're not looking for a sewing needle. You're just categorizing that as a foreign body. So 29874. Now there was another range of code, so let's kind of look and see what the difference is. So 29866. Okay, so what is that? Same page. 29866, arthroscopy, knee surgical. Okay, still feeling good, but the variations that are supplied within that particular range, none of them include the removal of a foreign body. So that ends up being your devil in the details there. All right. Next up, we've got a fracture to the right medial malleus closed, no manipulation. Here's another good one where you are being, challenged with anatomical knowledge. What is a malleus, right? So if you're not sure, I always encourage you guys to get on Google and do a little search, and we're about ready to discover what a malleus is. All right, so I'm going to go to the condition on this one, which is a fracture, and then I'll take it from there. All right, so I've already marked this off for us so I can kind of guide you. If you were to go over to fracture and look for malleus, you're not going to find it. So what is a malleus? That is your ankle, okay? And then now we're going to get into those finer details. Now that we've identified ankle is malleus, then we're going to review and find medial, okay? So medial, and then you have several codes that you have to review. Now, the only thing that I have not been able to capture from my index is that this was a closed, no manipulation. So those are the two identifiers, keywords that I'll be looking for in my tabular section. All right, once we get over to our tabular section, we find that 27760 gives us closed treatment. Excellent. There's my medial malleus fracture without manipulation. All right, now we've put all of those puzzle pieces together. All right, up next, we've got a surgical correction with internal fixation, left patellar fracture. All right, so with this one, we could go to fracture, patella, and then start matching up those additional key terms, correction, internal fixation. We'll take it from there. All right, so I'm going to go back to fracture, and now I'm going to look for patella. All right, nice. So starting at fracture, then just taking it over. There's patella, and then we internal fixation. So if they are going to add some type of internal fixation, plates, screws, wires, whatever it is, they're going to have to make an incision, right? So when you think about open, kind of pair that together. Or excuse me, when we talk about internal fixation, just know that they're going to have to make some type of, they're going to have to access that area. So 27524, and then let's go over to our tabular section. And there we go. So 27524, open treatment, patella fracture with internal fixation and or partial or palectomy and soft tissue repair. So and or means it could have included it, or it could also be a partial or complete palectomy, and this would still be your code choice, 27524. All right, up next, we've got a lengthening of multiple hamstring tendons unilateral. So uni equals 1, right? So now we know we've got hamstrings, anatomical knowledge here. So where are your hamstrings? Your hamstrings are tendons that are in the back of your upper leg. All right. They're giving us details of multiple and unilateral is telling you that it's on one side. So one of the legs was treated, multiple tendons, hamstring tendons were lengthened on one side. All right. So now I'm going to go over into my index, and I'm going to start with tendon. And I'm going to try this. This is a very specific type of procedure. So I'm going to look for tendon lengthening is where I'm going to start at. Get over to my T's here. All right, tendon lengthening. And you're not going to find hamstring, right? You got to know where your hamstrings are. So your hamstrings are in your upper leg. And you got a range of codes here, 27393 through 27395, right? So what have I not captured from my index? The word multiple and the word unilateral. So that's what I'm looking for when I get over to my tabular section. All right. Here's our range of codes. So your base is 27393, lengthening of hamstring tendon. Stop, right? That semicolon, and then take it down and look the variation of that service. So 27393 is for a single tendon, right? So we got to match our terminology up. We have multiple and then we have unilateral. So one leg would be your unilateral, one side. So 27394 is your final answer. All right, up next, we've got IND hematoma. So IND represents incision and drainage. Okay, and then we know it's in the ankle, and a hematoma is the problem. That's my condition, right? So they're going to incise that area, and they're going to drain this hematoma. Okay, so let's go into our index. And I'm thinking because they gave us a condition, right, of what they're draining, I want to go to hematoma and see what I find there. So I'm going to flip over to my H's here. I love it when a plan comes together. All right. So here we are. We're at hematoma. Okay. Site, ankle, and then just one code there, incision and drainage, 27603. And then to take that to our tabular section, two, 603. Here we go. Hematoma or incision drainage, leg or ankle. That's your base. And then it says deep abscess or hematoma. So they could have labeled it as either one of these or described the service as a deep abscess or a hematoma. And it could have said leg or ankle, and you would still choose 27603. All right, up next, we've got a repair to a risser jacket. So I'm going to go for that word risser jacket, and see what I find. Go over to my R's here. Now, if you went to repair, right, I'm already over in the repairs as I'm scrolling along here. You could look HI, there's only one J listed under the repair section, and it's not a jacket, so you got to move on from that. QR, if you went to the R's, you also don't have any options for risser, right, or jacket. So we got to go to that actual word. All right, so that's going to, let's see here, 12. There we go, the risser jacket. Now, when you get over to risser jacket, you're going to notice you've got two options. You've got an application and a removal. There's no talk about a repair. However, this is where your critical thinking comes in. So you ask yourself, okay, well, we know that there's only one index section or entry for a risser jacket. So somewhere in these two code ranges, there's got to be some type of direction for us as to how to code for a repair of this type of jacket. So you really have to just go over to this range of codes and search for some more information that's going to lead you over to the appropriate category. And so this, again, this is where your critical thinking kicks in. And we just have to go and review those two ranges. So let's go check it out and see what the difference is. So if I was to go over to 29010, 29010. Okay, so this is the application of cast and strapping. Okay, so again, paying attention to these bold red areas. So we got application. So we need to read your guidelines. You may find that your guidelines give you some information, some clues. If you're looking for repairs, go here. Let's see what it says. So it says all services that appear in the musculoskeletal system section include the application and removal of the first cast splint or traction device when performed. Supplies are reported separately. If the cast is removed by someone other than the professional, or excuse me, the physician or other qualified healthcare professional who applied the cast, report the cast removal code 29700, 29705, and 29710. It also gives you some reference if for subsequent replacement cast, and then some details that this is not considered part of preoperative care. So they're telling you that this particular modifier for preoperative management is not applicable. Okay, so now we have to look for, we know we're in the right area, right? Cast, strapping, and now we have to look for the subsection. And look at this. Removal or repair. So that second range of codes that was listed from our index did not include the word repair, but once you're over in your tabular section, you can see that all the codes listed here can be either or, right? So now the repair of a spike up body cast or jacket 29720. Yes, it does not specifically say Risser jacket, and that is okay, right? That is your, if you're, again, this is one that definitely took some, a little bit of critical thinking here. If you review the codes in this section, the removal code for the Risser jacket, right? It clearly defines it as Risser. But again, it says shoulder, hip spica, Minerva, or Risser jacket, etc. So it just reduced the amount of terminology in the repair code, but this is telling you this covers spica, body cast, and any type of jacket that may have been applied to the patient. Don't get stuck too long in your index, right? Sometimes you just got to take a range of codes and just go over to your tabular and see what's listed there. Not everything is clearly spelled out and defined from your index, right? You got to be a little detective. Got to put the thinking cap on and do a little footwork sometimes. All right. Up next, we've got a fracture of a femoral shaft open with screws left. All right, so anatomical location is your femur. Your femur is your upper long leg bone. They're telling you a specific area where that fracture occurred was in the shaft of the femur. So you've got different sections on your bones, right? You got your proximal, you got your distal, and you have in this particular bone, you've also got this specific identification of the shaft of the bone. And then we got details. We got open and screws. So we know it was an open procedure. They repaired it with some type of screws. So let's go over and let's start by reviewing fracture. And then I'm going to start looking for femur. All right, so fracture, femur, and then I'm going to start looking for those extra details. Open, okay. Multiple codes that have to be reviewed, right? Again, you're always asking yourself, what have I not captured from the index? Well, from the index, we've got fracture, femur, open treatment. Great. What have I not captured? Screws and shaft. So those are the two keywords I'll be reviewing once I get over to my tabular section. All right. There we go. 27507, open treatment. There's that detail of what part of the femur, the shaft, and then with plate, screws, with or without cerclage. So that's what we need, 27507. Let's read this coding tip before we move on. Coding tip for fractures and dislocations. You'll find this coding tip under several different subsections related to fracture and dislocation. Just depends on, this is mentioned multiple times. The codes for treatment of fractures and joint injuries, dislocations are categorized by the type of manipulation and stabilization, so fixation and mobilization. These codes can apply to either open, so open represents compound fractures, or closed fractures or joint injuries. All right, up next, we've got a right Joplin bunionectomy with proximal metatarsal osteotomy. All right, base procedure, bunion removal, right? So ectomy is removal. So bunionectomy, and then we'll get down to these little fine details. So start with the word bunionectomy. Flip over to my B's here. So I didn't find bunionectomy, but I did find bunion repair, right? And now we're going to start looking through these variations. So there's bunionectomy. Okay. Now, how can we get any more detail? Yes, we can. We can reduce this down to 2 codes to review just by looking for that metatarsal osteotomy. Awesome. So now I've just got 2 codes, 28295 and 28296. And now I'm asking myself, I wonder what the difference is between these 2 codes. All right, so let's go find out. Oh, some bonus information here. So when you go over to your tabular section, you'll see that the code that we're looking for says it's out of numerical sequence. Anytime you see this, just go to the range of codes that it directs you to, and they're telling you that your code will be found within this range. Sometimes codes get resequenced. That happens when they do revisions on these books every year. And sometimes they find that certain procedures should be grouped under different subsections, and that's more appropriate and relates to more of the same type of procedures. And so they'll just move it over to that section. So when you see the blue triangle, you can also go down to your ledger at the bottom of your pages, and you can see that this is a revised code. Revised means that they changed some of the wording, right? Maybe made it more specific. And then the pound sign just means that this came from another area and a different previous version of the manual, and now it's been moved. That's all that means to you. Neither one of these affects your coding. This is just information for you as the coder. All right. So we can see here that this is a variation. So we got to go to our base procedure. Okay. Here's your base procedure, 28292, correction, hallux valgus with bunionectomy, with sesamoidectomy when performed. When performed means it didn't have to be performed, but if they did, that's going to be included or bundled into this code as well, not separately reported. Okay. Stop. Okay. Take it to your variation with proximal metatarsal osteotomy, any method. All right, up next, we've got a repair of a severed collateral ligament, right ankle. All right, so, I was thinking about going to ligament repair. Okay, maybe that's what I'll do here. Okay, let's see. HIJK. I love it when a plan comes together. Yeah, so I decided to start at ligament and then look for repair and then that specific anatomic site. I ended up finding it very first entry under ligament, ankle, and then that specific type of repair, collateral ligament. And it gives us two codes. We got choices of 27695 and 27696. Okay, wonder what the difference is. Well, since it's ligaments, I'm thinking single versus multiple, possibly. All right, let's go and check it out and see what the answer is. Here we go. All right, 27695, repair primary disrupted ligament ankle, and then detail collateral. Excellent. All right, I went over, I usually stop this at question 10 and break it down into two parts. So I'm going to stop this video now, and then I'm going to pick up on part 2, starting with question 13.